This story takes place when I was 14, I'm now 23. It was late summer and I was coming home from hanging out at the beach for my best friend Mia's birthday party. When I got off the subway at my stop, I looked at the bus arrival screen. The bus that I would normally take home was arriving in an hour. Being a tired 14-year-old girl, I decided to take an alternate bus route home. This was a decision that I would later regret. When I get off the bus at my stop, I have about a 10-minute walk to my building. My area at night is usually pretty quiet, not many cars on the streets. As I'm walking up the street, I hear the sound of an engine nearby. I look over my left shoulder and see a white panel van. I know how typical, rolling up the street. I tried to think nothing of it, but when I turn onto my street, the van does too. Now, I'm unsettled and I start walking faster. This van is driving slowly and it never passes me. When I turn up the long driveway to my building, the van once again turns too. Now I'm scared. The driveway to my building has an ice rink on the side of it with bright lights. So I walk beside the rink under the bright lights. There are small townhouses on the other side of this driveway. The van catches up to me and stops. So I think maybe this person is lost and trying to ask for directions. I was trying to find some way to rationalize this. I stop. I stay about 4 feet from the van just in case. I look in the van window to see an older man, starting to bald with black hair and a white t-shirt. I ask if they're lost and they don't respond. Instead, they try to get me into their van. I say no and start walking, but the van continues to drive slowly, following me. When a red car begins to drive down the driveway, the van drives all the way to the end of the driveway and waits for the red car to turn out before reversing and be back beside me again. The man is still trying to get me into the van. I want to make a mad dash to my building, but I'm worried that he will see where I live, and so I keep walking. When another car comes down the driveway, the van does what it did before. It drives to the end and waits for the car to leave. But this time, there is a cab dropping someone off at the townhouses. The cabbie is closing his trunk when he sees me. "You okay?" he asks. I tell him how this van has been following me, and every time a car comes, the van drives to the end and waits for it to leave before following me again. The cabbie tells me that he will get in his car, drive to the end of the driveway, and sit there for a bit so I have enough time to run to my building. I tell him okay and thank you. The van is back in line with me again, so the cabbie gets in his cab and drives up the driveway and the van follows. I look and see the 2 vehicles sitting there. I run up the rest of the driveway into my building's lobby. My heart is racing. When I get to my apartment, I'm still freaked out. I go into my room and I call the cops. While I'm on the phone with the cops, I look out of my bedroom window and I see the van. It's slowly driving around my building looking for me. Now I'm fully panicking. The cops sent officers to sweep the area, but they don't find him. 2 officers came to my apartment to get a statement from me. About a week after this happened, the officers come back to my apartment. They show me a photo of the man from the van that they were able to get from the security camera on the side of my building. I told them that the man in the photo was the one that had followed me, and they told me that they found him and that he was being put on the list. We used to have a tiny barn on my property, and it was my job to milk our dairy goats every morning. So every single morning at almost the exact same time, I'd be in the back corner of our lot to milk. It was in a fairly isolated area of our yard and between 3 neighbors' fields or pastures, which was intentional since goats can be quite talkative. So it was right beside our neighbors' chain-link fence or grapevines. I would sing fairly loudly every morning since there was generally nobody to be bothered and it calmed down the goats. So it was easy to know there was a girl back there every morning and night. This particular morning, my mom had a bad feeling and made my little brother go with me. He was bored, so he messed around and collected eggs while I milked. There were little windows all around, including a wide one right behind me, and the doors were wide open, so I figured he had come back eventually. Well, I saw him walk past the doors and start talking to somebody. I figured it was the neighbor, so I didn't worry when he said, "Okay, I'll get my mom," and he took off. And then I heard the chain link fence behind me rattle, and I turned around just in time to see a man launch himself over the chain link fence into the neighbor's yard. He had been watching me and waiting since before I got into the yard. I don't know what he would have done if my mom hadn't made my brother go with me that morning. From then on, though, I did get out of goat milking by myself. Back in the summer of 2020, I was 14 and I would spend a lot of time with my cousin. We both loved going on walks and would always walk in the neighborhood near her house. One night, I was spending the night over and we decided to go on a walk. It was around 10 p.m. and the roads weren't well lit, so it was very dark. We were used to doing that, so we weren't really scared at all. While we were walking, a white Jeep started driving very closely to us. The guy who was driving lowered his window and there was another guy with him. They both seemed to be around 25 years old. The guys were just weirdly staring at us for like 2 minutes. Then the guy in the passenger seat started asking weird questions like, "Are you girls not scared of the dark?" And after asking this, he drove away. Me and my cousin were relieved, thinking that it was all just a joke. But unfortunately, we noticed the Jeep's lights on the road, and it seemed like they were just going back and forth before coming to our level again. And it was the passenger seat guy who talked. He asked if we wanted to ride home and then said that we will take care of you while smiling. And at this moment, my cousin's eyes opened wide. After that, they drove away again. My cousin and I were petrified and we couldn't even speak. We were still hearing the Jeep, so we didn't want to run home because we were scared that they would try to follow us home. We hid inside a garden behind trees for about 10 minutes. The Jeep came back, but fortunately, they didn't see us. We didn't have our phones on because we usually don't take them on walks either. When the lights disappeared, we sprinted home. We got there and cried a lot. And she told me that she had gotten scared because she had noticed that there was a knife and some sort of pills in the back seat. When I was in high school, I was like 16 at this time. I had a friend Lisa and a second friend Zoe. Lisa had like a lot of money and her huge house was located right next to our high school. So every time we had a break or anything, the three of us would go there. And we would also have a lot of sleepovers at her house. It was this huge, rich people house, so it was awesome to stay there. So one day, we decided to stay the night there, and the three of us plus Lisa's little sister Anna, and their mother was gone for the night. We decided to put on some PJs and watch scary movies for hours. Anna went to bed before us three, and we just stayed in the living room watching TV. At one point, the alarm goes on, and it happens sometimes, so Lisa just ran to turn it off and that was it. But then like 10 minutes later, the alarm goes off again, and it scared us, because it's really not supposed to. Technically, the alarm was made to ring only when humans would come by, because the house was located in the middle of the forest, so we all knew that sometimes animals would come by the house. It had happened before. So when the alarm was installed, it was calibrated for humans only. It was the second time that it rang. We started to get a little bit scared, so we went upstairs, opened the windows to look at the garden all around the house, and there was nothing. We even went on the balcony in the middle of the night, nothing. I was alone on the balcony at some point, and the alarm went on again, and the automatic lights around the swimming pool had turned on. That meant something was around it, and I was just above it. I got so scared that I got on my knees and stayed there until my friend deactivated the alarm and the lights, and I ran inside of the house. At this point, we were really scared and started thinking about what it could be. If it has to be any human, all of our lights were on, so they knew where we were. We turned all the lights off, and all four of us went hiding downstairs in the kitchen, without our cell phones. I don't even know why, not even one of us thought about taking at least one of them. So we were there, lights off, scared in a huge house, with windows everywhere that we could look. And the alarm went berserk again. Anna screamed and Lisa took her with her, reassuring her while walking to shut the alarm off. Like, turn it off once and for all. So I was in the kitchen with Zoe only, and we were just looking around us. The alarm was upstairs, so the two girls were far away from us. At some point, we heard footsteps right beside us, like right on the other side of the wall in the garden. It was fast, not scary, just fast, like the person knew where they were going. So we froze and waited in the dark, and then jumped when something, well, someone, it was obvious, walked by the door or the window right in front of us. We think it was a he, had a light, but it was another light that allowed us to see a silhouette. So there were at least two, running around the house for about at least 20 to 30 minutes. An extra detail, but this door was, like I said, a window door, and there were Venetian blinds on it, but of course they weren't closed. We were still not moving, and the girls upstairs were so scared that they stayed there. At least that's what they told us. Suddenly, one voice and then a second one. I was unable to understand anything, but I heard it. And Zoe and I were blinded by a sudden light right at our faces. We were literally not able to move, scream, or talk. Not anything we could have done was possible. We were just frozen in fear. The light stayed there, and someone was seeing us through the blinds. Someone was watching us, being scared, and was just staying there. Suddenly, we heard a hard sound on the front door, which was closed. Zoe didn't move at all, but I don't know what took me. It just woke me up, and I crawled to the door in front of me, the back door, closed the blinds, and just holded the door in place in case the guys on the other side tried to force it. Honestly, I'm small and thin. My little body was useless there, but I did it anyway. The one at the front door was still trying to enter. Zoe was still not moving. The two girls upstairs doing I don't know what. And the one, just a glass window away from me, started hitting it, trying to force it in. It was closed, but I grabbed the handle and hung there for a while he was hitting it and trying to open the door. All this lasted hours on my head, but it was probably only a few seconds. At one point, the hits at the front door stopped. A few seconds later, the other one in front of me stopped as well. Then the lights just moved fast everywhere. The alarm did nothing, so it was disabled as wanted, and there was nothing. Zoe and I just slept in the kitchen, and the two sisters were upstairs. Nothing happened at all, and it was over. The next day, Lisa and Anna's mom came back home. We told her everything and got yelled at a bit because we didn't call the cops. I took it wrong at that time, but I understand now why she got upset. She called the police, who went to see the house and discovered footsteps all around it. Some muddy footprint marks on the front door. They said that they must have tried to kick the door in. And that was it. They told us that it had to have been some guys who were just doing some recon. You know, when they just walk around the houses to see how to rob it. It was pretty common in this area. There are a lot of really big and beautiful houses filled with expensive things. The only thing that I'll never be able to explain is why they started being so aggressive. Originally, they were just walking around and scoping at the house, but I think that if they were trying to see something or just look things up, they would have left when they realized that we were inside. Or at least left when that guy saw us in the kitchen. Well, they didn't. The moment they saw us in the kitchen, they didn't see the two sisters. They started being aggressive and trying to force the doors to enter the house where we were. I don't know if they really wanted to rob the house, and I never will, and honestly, I don't want to know. I didn't spend any more nights at this house. I got so scared that they would come back again that I couldn't sleep there. Lisa got a bit mad, like she didn't understand, but from what she told Zoe and I, she didn't see them. She just stayed upstairs with her sister. I understand it, but I wasn't able to stand the fact that she couldn't understand how scared I was as well. Okay, so this happened probably around 2002. I had moved to Belfast from London and I would have been like 11. I'm 30 now. Anyway, I lived in a new area. A lot of houses were being built and they were all massive and beautiful, despite being in a terrible area that I thankfully no longer live in. I was with a friend called Dave when we were looking for my sister, and we go around the corner from my house down where they're building a bunch of these houses and it's pretty dark out. I would say it had to be around 10 or 11 at night. I don't really remember why we were actually looking for my sister. I don't even think she was around. Anyway, we were walking past houses that looked pretty much finished. We're chatting and a guy randomly shows up out of the blue behind us and grabs a hold of me. Dave, by this stage, is completely petrified and runs away crying and climbs over a fence. He completely ditches me. The guy is very casual despite being creepy, and I'm not as freaked out as I should be. I assume that he's a provy, which is someone who watches these streets in West Belfast. He's got a hold of me, and it's like when you've been caught in a place you shouldn't be in. I expect him to just be like, "You shouldn't be here at night while we're patrolling the streets." But suddenly, we go to a house which isn't completely built yet and nobody lives in it. Well, I think. I'm literally standing inside the basement looking house while he's outside phoning the police. I assume that he's fake calling the cops. The conversation sounds fake, and he sounds like he's just trying to scare me, and he is. I get really freaked out now though, because upstairs, there's like this constant tapping sound, and it can't be a builder by himself at like 11 p.m., right? It sounded like someone was locked in something trying to get out, and that scared me. It was the speed of the sound, as if they knew I was in the house. It sounded like they were trapped upstairs or something. And suddenly he's off the phone and he's like, "Okay, the cops are coming to your house soon, leave now." I'm thinking, nah, not really. I didn't give you my address, but at the same time, I was freaking out because maybe this guy knows the streets and where I live. So that entire night, I was just looking at my window hoping no cops would show up. They didn't in the end, and he obviously did all of that just to scare me, but why? This situation for me is scary because a guy randomly grabbing a hold of you in the street in pitch black darkness is freaky, regardless of whether or not it's a building site, and I probably shouldn't have been there. He could have put me in a room and locked the door, had someone do stuff to me or something. I've always wondered, like, why was he there? What was he doing? Afterwards, I was so scared to go out at night in the area unless I had someone with me. Truth be told, there were a lot of issues in the area, and I'm guessing that guy and a bunch of other guys were acting like undercover cops, since the cops weren't usually comfortable coming up to where I lived, since they would usually get bricked. It comes from the troubles. Looking back though, I think the entrance was blocked off, and we weren't actually allowed in there. Considering the situation, I was actually pretty calm compared to my friend, and I have terrible anxiety. I think I just assumed that this guy wasn't bad, but again, on any given day, he could have been bad. This all happened in the sake of about 5 to 7 minutes, that it was hard to fully digest what was going on at the time, and it reminded me a little bit of the film Audition. Obviously nowhere near as freaky, but the sound upstairs, it was similar to the guy in the scene of The Audition. If you watch the film, you'll know what I mean, and if you haven't, you can probably understand that this situation was just weird and freaky.